Attending here with us in Ajax this morning, we're pleased to be here for a town hall with Tim Hudak. This is an opportunity for the Ajax Pickering Board of Trade, as well as members of the business community and the public at large, to come out, hear what Mr. Hudak has to say to us this morning, and ask any questions. I understand we have your undivided attention during a very busy time in Queen's Park these days. What do you say? I do that all the time with my daughters. It doesn't work as well. But thank you again for coming out and for continuing to listen to us. And we look forward to your comments and ask us some questions about Ajax Pickering.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. That was the applause line to warm up the end. There you go.
Tim, Dan Miles from the University of Ontario Institute of Technology. I'm wondering if you can expand on your first priority, which is balancing the budget, and maybe comment on the fact that how you plan to do that over what time frame, and whether you still feel the need, from a clinician perspective, to continue to increase investments in research and development, and to enhance infrastructure investments in colleges and universities at the same time as trying to achieve priority number one.
Okay. No, Dan, thanks for the question. Let me try to do some points relatively briefly, and then we can talk about the individual aspects, or Christine or John may want to add to that. I described earlier the size of the mess that we're in. And every hour of every day, we're spending $1.8 million more than we take in revenue. $1.8 million more every hour, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 a year. You can't run your business like that. You can't run your home like that, you'll lose it. And you can't run government like that. So the time that you walk out here, go back to work at home in Ajax Pickering, we'll have a province that's $2 million further in debt. And that's not just because we have talked too long. It's a serious situation. So what do you do about it? You stop spending now. I think we actually need to reduce the government as opposed to increasing it. Our plan actually called for a 10% reduction across the board outside of health and education. So you're asking me to throw a lot more money at those areas. Can't afford it. Wish I could say that, but somebody's got to get some straight talk to people in the province of Ontario. So health and education, we can get through those areas. Health will have to increase a little bit. That's the nature of the beast. There'll be more demands in the system. We can run it a lot better, and I'm glad we have folks here from the hospital. But the other areas we need to have a 10% reduction across the board. Start setting out the must-haves and nice-to-haves. And here's the other frank talk in our province, right? A little straight talk here. We're well past the notion of simply cutting out the fat, of reducing duplication and waste. The low-hanging fruit, we missed that chance years ago. So we'll have to reduce or eliminate services. We listen to what the best advice is, but you can't stay on the path we're on. We're spending $1.8 million an hour. Where do we start? Public sector pay freeze across the board. Secondly, I think that we need to get out of the corporate welfare business. We're spending billions of dollars a year taxing all the folks here in this row, so we can give this gentleman a grant because he came with the right fundraiser and the best lobbyist. I don't think that's fair, no matter how charming this fellow is, because governments have a lousy record of picking winners and losers. It's just not right in our province to continue down that path. Third, we need to make some tough choice about what government should and should not do. First of all, if you decide that you're going to provide a public service, and then secondly, should it actually be government bureaucrats that provide it? I think the era that the same public sector union delivers the same service year after year, regardless of quality or efficiency, have come to an end. That's an old 20th century based policy. So you should compete out things like Service Ontario. Should it be done by the private sector union, the public sector union? Let them compete, a municipality. I'm not ideological about this. I want to know who can give the best quality service at the best rate to the taxpayer. And if they can't do it, they lose contract. But I think we need to come to that point where we say, what should we actually deliver at the end of the day? And one thing that I know Roger will care very much about too is fixing a broken arbitration system. You familiar with the arbitration system in Ontario? Basically, for sectors that can strike and others, they can go to what's called an arbitrator. They're supposed to act like as a judge or referee to say, okay, I heard from the employer, I heard from the union, and then they try to replicate what would happen if they were allowed to bargain. And it's supposed to reflect what happens in the private sector, but it's not. So by way of example, Stratford firefighters went to an arbitrator and they had a 20% wage increase. Now I respect our firefighters. They are highly skilled, trained individuals, men and women who put their lives on the line for our safety. But who in this room got a 20% wage increase last year? Right? It's not sustainable. Public sector pay and benefits need to reflect the private sector of the office. And there used to be a day that if you worked for the public sector, that meant you had job security, but you took a bit of a haircut when it came to your wages and your pension. Now we have the job security, plus we have wage agreements and pensions that many of the private sector could never dream. You can't have that imbalance. This doesn't work, and it runs against our history. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business put out a survey where they looked at private sector versus public sector, the exact same job. Any guesses when you included wages and benefits and pensions, how much higher the public service worker got?
50%.
A little high.
29.
30, 20, sorry?
29.
Yeah, there you go. It's 27%. The guess is 27% higher. It's not sustainable and it's not fair to do so. So going on a little bit, but there are 4 of the areas we talked about. And the Drummond report, whether you agree with all 362 recommendations or not, at least it gave us a pathway forward to balance the books. And it seemed like Mr. Drummond came in the front door, gave his report, and he was ushered out the back door a few minutes later. So folks have ideas on the Drummond thing. But you know what? We chuckle a little bit about the image. We're at a mess. Right? We have a huge deficit, and while it's not happy news for a politician to come here to Ajax and say directly to your face, we can't afford the path we're on, and to call it like it is, we simply can't. That makes some tough choices today. Otherwise, the medicine's a lot tougher now.
I'm glad you remembered my name. There's a piece of legislation before the House called the Attracting Investment Creating Jobs Act 2011. And it's waiting for third reading. And it has enshrined 2 of the provincial development funds and created a third one called the Southwestern Ontario Development Fund. And once again, Durham Region is excluded from any of these funds. We seem to be falling on the wrong side of the priority list again. I know this has been an issue for the boards of trade and the chambers of commerce in this region, plus the various levels of government. And I understand that this legislation came out of committee, which we presented to. The amendments were not made to the territorial definitions of these development funds. And we were wondering, first of all, is your government able to make any amendments before this becomes law to include Durham Region within the territory, or failing that, should you form a government, would you change this inequity and get us included?
No. I'll be direct with you. I mean, that's probably not happy news to feel like I can invite you back down. Here's the bottom line. You know, we keep having these stopgap measures where every region and province wants an economic development fund, and then we have one for the entire province, right? We voted against the bill. And so the first part of your question, you know, if it's gone through second reading, there are no more amendments coming forward. It's gone through committee, it's going back to House for third reading. So there's not an amendment process. We voted against the bill because we can't afford new spending programs. And here's why. Like, I can appreciate if businesses are struggling, they're drowning in a pool of higher taxes and higher energy rates and more red tape, that you want to throw a life preserver from time to time. The problem is, you got to solve the underlying problems as opposed to just throwing out the occasional life preserver to whoever was lucky enough to lobby to get a grant. Ronald Reagan used to have an old saying he'd use, which is, the problem with government is, they see a business that's working, then they start taxing it. And if it's still moving, then they regulate it. And then when it's stopped dead, you subsidize it. Right? I just take a very different logic. So Gary, directly appreciate the question you're asking. We have to remember to appreciate the need they have. What I want to do is get at the economic fundamentals, get energy rates under control, lower taxes across the board, get government out of your way, so all businesses can succeed, not because they had an in through a lobbyist, but because they have a product people care about and want, and they can actually sell that in the marketplace. So, you know, it's not happy news for it, but I want to get the economic fundamentals, not give out more handouts to those who are already drowning, lower the pool.